a heartbreaking story because I can't see this going well. Heartbreaking story. Let me read this. We cannot ignore the fact that if Brittney Griner wasn't a black woman, it would be plastered across the news that she's being held as a political prisoner in Russia. That's from Representative Cori Bush, Democrat from Missouri, via Twitter. And of course, for everybody that doesn't know, Brittney Griner is a WNBA player who was flying through Russia or was leaving Russia, got stopped in Russia for having a vape cartridge of weed. Now, I've seen articles say that it's just a vape cartridge that don't necessarily say it's weed. It is Russia. There is clearly things going on with Russia invading a country known as Ukraine. So kind of crazy times in Russia in general. And even pre-war, Russia, not the most copacetic, not the coolest spot to get caught doing something in. And weed, despite the fact that I think it should be legal, I consume it on a regular basis. It is a safe plant that has never harmed a human life, is not responsible for ending a human life in the history of humans. You can literally drink more water. You could drink too much water and kill yourself. But there is not enough weed you could take to end your life. It is impossible. That's how safe marijuana is. But even in the United States, there are many places in this country where weed is very illegal. And there are many countries where weed is very illegal. So if it is true that this basketball player, Brittney, had a vape cartridge on her, that is not a smart decision on her part, if it's true. Let's say for argument's sake that it is true, that she had a vape cartridge like this, filled with weed, like this one is. I would not, I've definitely heard of people flying with it within the U.S. If I was going to Canada, I probably wouldn't be worried about it. Certain parts of Europe, especially if I was going to like Amsterdam, wouldn't be worried about it. Also probably wouldn't be bringing it with me if I was going to a place like that. But if I'm going to a place like Russia, if I'm going to a place like China, if I'm going to any of these countries that clearly think of weed as if it is the most dangerous substance you can have, because they are still controlling their population with that propaganda that weed is dangerous, I wouldn't be caught dead with any of that stuff. Now, maybe she didn't know she had it on her. Maybe it was just in her bag. That's happened before. Maybe it was planted on her bag. That could definitely happen. Cops in the U.S. plant stuff on people all the time. It wouldn't be crazy that somebody in Russia would do that. Which in that case, if it was planted on her, then that's horrible. That is, it's horrible regardless. She should just be sent back to the U.S., right? Let the U.S. deal with it. Whatever laws she broke. But, if she knowingly brought a vape cartridge into Russia, that's like, you failed an IQ test in that moment. That's what that is, right? It's like these athletes that get popped for steroids in organizations that only test for steroids once a year. Like, they don't do the USADA random drug testing pool thing like the UFC does. They do the thing that other fight organizations do, where it's just they test you once a year, and if you're smart, you cycle off the steroids so that when you test, you don't test positive, or that your levels aren't like all wackadoo like they would be if you were taking steroids, right? So people that get busted in those organizations for taking steroids, those people failed an IQ test. And if you get busted with a weed vape cartridge overseas in a country that is not a place you want to get busted with weed, that's kind of on you. So it's hard to really have a lot of sympathy. Now, clearly this all could be bullshit, and maybe she didn't. She says she's innocent. I haven't read anything into it, right? Because it's just a lot of hearsay. It's like what? It's so impossible to know if the information you read on any given subject is legitimate, right? When it comes to the pandemic stuff, I rely on scientists that study this stuff and what their opinions are, right? As far as this is concerned, like everything's an opinion. Nobody knows what really happened. Brittney knows. And she's, as far as what you are going to, how you're going to handle it logistically to try and get your freedom, I don't think, saying that you intentionally had something, you knowingly had something, is a position you want to take in Russia. Like, you want to probably say you didn't know it was there. You want to distance yourself as much as you can from it. So hopefully you want to talk about a hashtag free Brittney. This I care more about than a conservatorship that somebody that, may or may not be mentally well was put in. I mean, not that the conservatorship of Brittney Spears was a legitimate thing that should have happened, but like, that's, she's not in a Russian prison. Let's put it that way. The freedom that Brittney Spears had in her conservatorship was far more than what Brittney Griner has in a Russian prison right now. Light years different. So I would definitely support this hashtag of free Brittney for sure. And hopefully she gets out of there. But it's like when I heard the news, I'm like, well, assuming that the news is right, that she was traveling knowingly with a vape cartridge, she's kind of an idiot. I mean, you got to know that weed is super legal in a lot of places still. I live in California where it is about as legal as you can have it. But I know that, like, if I'm driving through Texas, I could easily go to prison. If I'm driving through different states, I got to know that, like, it's a possibility that shit could go down. And not to mention in a different country that's already like Russia is just a step or two away from North Korea. I mean, there is more similarities between Russia and North Korea than there are differences. I mean, there are North Korean slave camps in Russia. That's how connected Russia and North Korea are. And I wouldn't go to South Korea with weed. And I don't even know what their laws are. I would just assume. It's like, if I need it, and it's okay there, then I'll get it there. But I don't need to be taking stuff, because then that's a whole nother thing. Like transporting weed. Anyway, I feel bad because it's not something that should be illegal at all. But also, we live in a crazy world where it is. And, I feel bad. Hopefully she gets released. Free Brittney, for sure. But, I have my concessions. I can't like go all in on it because it's like, on some level you gotta unless it's all bullshit, in which case I should just really research these stories more.